Alright, okay. Oh boy. Let's get the hell out of here. Okay, where's the door? What's up here? What's up? Over here. No! Alright, that's the door. Alright. Okay. Alright. Clear. Okay. What?
Hey, wanna play Stalker?
Oh, okay, guess not.
Sup gamers, morbidly obese Eastern European are here. Ever wanted to consume 15-year-old vodka with the boys while huffing copious amounts of radioactive goo? Well, I do, which is why I've decided to finally play Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, or better yet, Stalker, fuck you, this game will not run on your device. Now, I quite literally couldn't make any progress. Not because I am terrible at games, well, actually, yes, that too, but this game just comes jam-packed with what you and I might call game-breaking bugs and glitches, while Stalker purists will refer to as merely anomalies. So, with some duct tape, lots of patience, and one Ukrainian modder's help, I finally got the game to actually work, only after buying it for the second time on GOG. So, was it worth the €4.99, which could have fed my Eastern European family for 3 generations? What exactly is Stalker as a game? To some, it's the guy sneaking in your girlfriend's backyard. To others, it's the glorious experience of living in the Soviet Union. In reality, it's a first-person shooter, open-world survival horror game, but with Ukrainians. Based on the real-world Chernobyl nuclear disaster, which was shamelessly copying the hit TV show Chernobyl on HBO. My first time hearing about it was all the way back when I was a child. Little Blue Lad was watching the TV when a now defunct TV channel was hosting a documentary about the disaster. Of course, naturally, I freaked the fuck out and ran to my parents trying to explain it, only to realize that this happened in 1986. But in the game, this disaster is only the first one. A second disaster took place in 2006, causing strange anomalies to start appearing. However, our journey begins in the humble year of 2012, and while everyone else was freaking out about the end of the world, stalkers were making their way into the zone to uncover strange mutants, incredible riches, and bizarre anomalies. We will watch as a strange man finds a lone survivor from a truck accident, bringing him over to a chunky fella before revealing the Stalker marking on our arm. Also, why are we all bald? Alright, yeah, the copious amounts of radioactivity. Now, the word Stalker itself is an acronym for scavengers, trespassers, adventurers, loners, killers, explorers, robbers, and men that are extremely bald. And of course, it's a name given to people that trespass into the zone. We seem to have suffered from a mild case of forgetty, or amnesia, and our only task is to kill someone named STRELOK, a name that more or less means shooter. Since we don't exactly know where this guy is, we instead talk to Stradorovich, who resembles the thumbs from the Spy Kids movies.
I want you to find a stalker called Nimble.
Before heading out to look for a man named Nimble, who might have a USB drive with further information about STRELOK. I should point out that this is kind of where the game lets you loose with freedom, something which many games claim but Stalker actually delivers upon. You can start shooting everybody if it tickles your fancy. But given that I'm merely a humble citizen, I'll be instead talking to Wolf. He's the leader of all the furries. Turns out, he wants me to be his bottom bitch and help his pals to remove some of the worst kind of people. Crackheads. Actually, it's just a bunch of bandits who kidnapped Nimble, so that's where we'll find him. I also checked my PDA, or personal digital assistant, which looks like the BlackBerry and iPhone had a child together. However, it holds a few important details. One being our diary, and other things being rankings. This is an actual real system in the game where you can see all the other stalkers in the zone and where they are ranked. Now, you might think that these are just random made-up names, but no, these guys will actually be found out and about in the world, actually living their lives. We're given, frankly, one of the most shit pistols you could ever get your hands on, and of course, I'm gonna be heading over and meeting up with Wolf's men, because it's time to become heroes. With everybody being killed, I can loot their bodies, and I will say that checking corpses for gear in Stalker is kind of like opening a loot box. You never know exactly what you might get.
Should I open it, or should I keep it sealed?
Oh no, you should have kept it sealed.
You're crazy.
And since looting is the main way to gear up for progression, the randomness of what you might actually find can at times be half the fun, as you might simply be gambling
Let's go gambling!
on the fact that an enemy you just spent half of your munitions fighting was even worth the effort and cost of engagement. Either way, I can collect a USB drive. I have the option of simply grabbing the USB from Nimble without much effort, or I can shoot poor Nimble and grab it from his corpse without even engaging with any of the bandits when I first got here. You see, choice in this game isn't merely an option, it's a state of mind. With our first mission completed, I can finally continue my exploration, which is a fundamental part of this game's experience. So, I pick myself up a sawed-off shotgun from the bandits and then kill a few blind dogs. Their names being pretty clear. They're blind, they're mutated, and they're quite difficult to kill. From this location, I can actually complete a side quest for Nimble, and this is technically the path leading to another part of the map, but for now we're gonna return. Also, did I mention there is a random military base right next to the loner village? There isn't any reason for me to go there, but when I was picking up a random side quest from Wolf to kill these mutated boars, I kept having the full force of the army sent after me for just loitering around. Military brutality really gives you that true Slavic experience. Now, if you are extra devious, you could trick the military to follow you all the way back to the loner village and have them eradicate each other, allowing you to profit from their mutual annihilation. Now, this might be a good time to tell you about the gunplay and aiming. Now, half the time in this game, the aim will sway and move around as if your character has a mild case of Parkinson's. So, trying to stay solid and aim properly can be quite the hassle, to say the least. Even when you are dead set on your aim having hit their heads, you will still somehow miss, and it's just merely a flesh wound. Now, this could have something to do with me playing the game on the novice difficulty, which is literally what I did the first time around because it's the lowest difficulty. But the funniest part is, enemies actually take more bullets to kill as opposed to the higher difficulties where they die faster, but so do you. It's a great way to balance the game, which, speaking of, this is a hard video game. Perhaps because at its core, it is a hardcore FPS, part of a very small set of games within this genre. Shit, even having a simple stroll through town, everything will try to kill you. 1 second, you'll be bum rushed by a bunch of bandits, and shortly after that, a mutant might try to fondle your balls. Or maybe you run straight into an anomaly that crashes your entire game. Point being, death is once again merely a state of mind. Either way, Stredorovich is happy with our delivery, and we are given another mission to take on. Turns out that STRELOK, the man we're hunting, is a legendary stalker who found a way up north, towards the city of PRIPYAT, and close to the actual Chernobyl disaster's ground zero.
Breaches of the zone. That is a virgin area, a real gold mine for artifacts. Yeah. Anyway, I can help you find him. However, as you can imagine, it won't be a free ride. You'll have to work it off.
Turns out that Stredorovich and his homies want to find a path inside the north of the zone as well, but they are struggling to do this due to something at the center of the zone causing their heads to start exploding, both figuratively and literally. But apparently, at AGROPROM Research Institute, there is a suitcase that could hold information for us on how to actually go further up north, but the whole place is crawling with a mix of bandits, military, and duty soldiers. But before I leave Cordon, I spend some time enjoying the scenery. Ah yes, the lovely taste of hazardous material and burning corpses. What a day! The thing with Cordon is we will need to make our way back here eventually, but we can easily spend a few hours of gameplay just walking around and enjoying the scenery and or interacting with the game's very famous A-Life system. To explain it in layman's terms, A-Life is a game system which tries to make the NPCs act like real humans. They will start to fight each other, they will walk around, set up camps, and even take over areas and trade with each other. That's why when you look at your PDA, you see the names of actual real characters that are out there in the world doing their thing. Before even starting up Shadow of Chernobyl, I had the pleasure of playing a bit of Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl, and that game actually lacks the A-Life system's full implementation. So I was very curious to see how did this system work in the first 3 entries of this franchise. And to be honest, I kind of struggled to notice A-Life at first. I just assumed that most of what was happening was scripted, and that's kind of the fun part of it. In Stalker, you will never know if something is intentional, a bug, or A-Life doing its thing. Here, for example, I returned to where Wolf's men were located, but turns out a bunch of bandits had shown up and killed all of them. An NPC could suddenly be having a fight with a bunch of mutated boars, and the next second, the group of duty soldiers you saw, which was originally 5, is now down to only 2. Put simply, the A-Life system is almost as if all the NPCs are playing the game themselves, role-playing alongside you in the zone. It makes the zone feel alive. You will hear stories about a stalker in one area and then actually encounter said stalker walking around in the world as well. It's really cool. Hey, hi, I need to chill a bit. See, I opened up a Patreon, and I know a lot of you don't care about that, but for those of you who do and want to support me and go the extra mile, I'd really appreciate it. You'll have access to, of course, updates as I'm working on videos also ad-free with no ads or sponsorships in them, as well as your own custom-made Pepe. Everybody gets one for free that becomes a paid member, so yeah, it would be really appreciated if you guys would check it out. These videos take a long time to make, so if you'd be willing to support me the extra mile, it would be appreciated. If you don't want to, that's fine, but if you do, it would mean a lot. Thank you. After being done chilling with the boys, I know my next destination, AGROPROM. But first of all, I run into a random stash which was left behind by a previous stalker. It actually contains a silenced pistol, which could come in handy. I also spend way too much time just running around and dying to all manner of shit. One of these being the Anomalies. Now, they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and my first encounter was with Vortex. This one would react on impact and start spinning me around like a crackhead when you try to take his Taco Bell. Anomalies themselves are more or less unknown phenomena which have appeared all throughout the zone and caused the wildest shit to actually happen. You'll always know they are close by simply listening to the detector you're carrying around, which ticks each time you get close to one. There's a large variety of these as mentioned. One way to temporarily neutralize them is by throwing bolts at them. This will make the anomalies discharge their juices and temporarily allow you to pass them by. Unfortunately, this one loner who I run across was supposed to show me the way past the giant bridge, but he's kinda dead, and it might have to do with the electro anomaly inside of the tunnel that we need to pass through. This thing instantly reminded me of the Dark Star, also known simply as the Anomaly, which is found in another game called Metro 2033, as well as Metro Exodus. Now, unlike the anomalies in Stalker, however, the electric anomaly in the Metro moves around and will eventually blow itself up. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, you may not even be aware of the fact that the cult classic Metro 2033 was made by former GSC employees that originally worked on Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. Hence why there are so many similarities and even references to Stalker found in Metro 2033. And personally to me, this was one of those things that stood out as especially cool, and was just nice to see how similar yet different these two franchises are, since both are based on books and feature a world going through, well, basically total shit, and are set in Eastern Europe. Either way, given that the loner who tried passing through this place is straight up dead, I can only assume that this path will be close to impossible to use. The only other way around is trying to go over a giant railway, which is incredibly high in radiation, that I end up dying to that before the mutants even manage to eat my ass. So, our only way to AGROPROM is through a different pathway, the military blockade. Unfortunately, no amount of talking or offering to give them head will make these guys friendly. It is sad to say, but I have to lower my game difficulty here because of how impossible it kept feeling. And of course, I have to save scum a shit ton after every kill. It's frankly the only way, because the military tend to have access to much better equipment than me, your average Slavic man. Having finished off the entire military after giving them some sloppy seconds, I decided to go where Stradorovich told me to go, which is to find a man named Fox for further details on, well, STRELOK. Now, the only issue is that if I'm not fast, Fox actually gets hounded by a bunch of mutant dogs and dies. It's truly a dog-eat-dog world out here. However, if I do save him in time, he tells me that he ran across STRELOK on his team by accident and they had a little bit of a scruffle. I then offered to help him deal with another group of rabid speed fans before making my way out of Cordon. On my way there, I also encountered a lot of buddies that have been irradiated, as well as this one truck where I try to approach the corpse on it to loot it, but the radiation is just too much. There's loads of these strewn about that you can just check out if you want to. The border here is under fire by bandits towards the local stalkers. Naturally, I followed the old adage, when your enemy is attacking your friends, let them all die and loot what remains. Sun Tzu probably said that or something. With the bandits dead, we can cross through and enter the next location. Welcome to Garbage. I start my journey here by stopping some bandits dressed up as American high schoolers before we shoot them all and save the loner they were trying to rob. Now, I could have killed him too, but I'm just a chill guy. It turns out the locals are dealing with constant attacks from the bandits in the area, and we can offer our services to fight them back. Honestly, it's pretty easy to kill all these guys here, and mostly because they all drop a shit ton of ammunition, because you have a lot of places to hide with all the garbage around you. And there is a lot of bandits, so let's strap in and kill them all. This is also where I start noticing how crazy the gunplay can get at times. As mentioned previously, your guns will sway all over the place, feeling sometimes like the bullets hit everywhere besides where you're actually aiming, which would be fine if it wasn't for the fact that you also take insane amounts of damage each time you are being shot at. Another element you'll find is that guns often get jammed, causing you to have to spend a clean 2 to 3 seconds just reloading while the entire population of the Faroe Islands is trying to kill you. It definitely helps add to the whole realism and immersion factor of these games, which I think is one of the biggest selling points for anyone that jumps into Stalker. Sometimes the jamming becomes jarring, and not even the most fucked up rifle in real life could jam to such an extreme. But this isn't a franchise or game that you simply play. It's something you fully experience. Whether that's experiencing the brink of mental insanity, or having the game crash on you and delete all your save files, both of things which happen to me. But I'm a glutton for punishment, so like that guy from 50 Shades of Grey, I'm gonna enjoy letting the game repeatedly dominate me. Honestly, it actually helped quite a lot with keeping me immersed in the game's world. Suddenly, having shitty aim became realistic gun mechanics. The AI acting wacky going around attacking each other was immersion, and crashing was merely the act of an anomaly, breaking my poor computer apart. Slowly, my insanity became sanity, and I could enjoy my time in the zone, like a true stalker. So, with having helped the boys at Garbage Out, we learned that there are more of their friends in trouble nearby at the train depots. If we get there in time, we can help them repel several bandits trying to take the depot by force.
Но пришел тогда первый от Монолита и сказал: «Вразумитесь». Но не слушали они. Они думали застать нас врасплох. Но великий Монолит дал нам силу. Открыл нам глаза.
I did start noticing something interesting here, and specifically it comes to the bandits themselves. There's something peculiar about, well, first of all, their outfits, but also they keep yelling, "Chiki-briki в дамке."
Ну, чики-брики в дамке. Мыра, обходи эту шелупой.
This sentence is ingrained in my mind after thousands of hours of playing Counter-Strike with Dimitri, Stepan, and Ivan on many a nights during my youth. I would also recall "Chiki-briki," but I never understood the exact meaning of this sentence. Trying to figure out or properly translate it, the best I could find was it meaning, put the fucking bullet in his forehead, which sounds about right for a group of dudes in Adidas tracksuits. Speaking of those outfits, the bandits are clearly based on Eastern European gopniks. Now, this is a subculture, mostly consisting of young, lower-income youth or delinquents found in Ukraine and its neighboring countries. A stereotypical aspect of gopniks is that they tend to wear Adidas tracksuits, chug vodka, and of course, may have some tendencies to cause trouble. Now, in my youth, I did aspire to reach such legendary status. Alas, being from the Balkans, I had other issues to deal with. Unlike loners or stalkers, bandits group up and try their best to steal and take from others. They most likely consist of criminals and outcasts, something that isn't necessarily synonymous with real-life gopniks, who are more just downtrodden dudes who like to squat near the closest ATB market while drinking a bottle of Nemirov vodka. There is honestly a ton I would like to say about the bandits and all of the other factions, but for now, I'm way too busy killing all these dudes and getting my next mission. Also, as I'm walking around in this place, I do encounter something interesting. You see, way back at Stredorovich's bunker, I picked up a random side quest to kill a guy posing as Stredorovich's sales representative, or assistant. Little did I know, the guy was actually just walking around here. He's together with another dude and they're just strolling the wastelands. And of course, Stredorovich did not specify how he wanted me to handle this, so... Alright, well that is sorted. To be honest with you, this part of the zone is by far one of the most interesting to me. It's the first area where I got to see A-Life in action doing its weird thing of sending NPCs around and letting them live their strange little lives. But Garbage as a location is also by far one of the most visually interesting, and honestly, through simple environmental storytelling, we can learn quite a lot of clues about this place. First of all, the reason for the name being Garbage might have to do with the, well, giant hill-sized piles of trash all around us. These are super radioactive when you approach them, and the further up you go, the more likely you are to get killed. So it's safe to assume this is probably a bunch of trash and debris from the nuclear disaster in 1986 and 2006 in the game, which were all moved to this singular spot. This is the kind of cleanup which was attempted during the real Chernobyl disaster, but also was completed successfully in Fukushima in Japan as well. Nonetheless though, it makes Garbage into the perfect location of just environmental storytelling. You can sort of decide yourself how exactly things turned out like this and why it looks this way without the game having to explicitly tell you. Another thing about Garbage is also that it serves as the perfect starting ground for new stalkers. Due to the vast amount of irradiated machinery and objects, there's a high chance of things called artifacts to spawn. Now, up until now, you might have wondered just like me, what exactly is the point for people to enter the zone? I mean, I don't think people really come here simply for the good company and nice weather. So, what brings all these strangers and weirdos into a singular spot? Well, it's the artifacts. These are objects that are formed and created by the anomalies within the zone. They are the main reason for stalkers to even venture inside of this place. Now, these artifacts have a tendency to fetch a decent price on the black market, as different organizations want their hands on these to study them. But from a gameplay standpoint, the artifacts function somewhat like a stat booster or equipable item. To be honest, at first I found them sort of useless until I realized you could make a Tesco meal deal out of these things by combining them for the best possible results. Like in my case, for example, I was able to combine and mix certain artifacts, which would then boost my defensive and healing capabilities, but would make me eat up a ton of radiation at the same time. So I was slowly killing myself, not unlike your average Russian alcoholic. However, if I then used an artifact which would lower the damage I take from radiation, it would sort of balance itself out. It's frankly a fantastic gameplay system. At first, it might seem useless and radiation might not seem like a big problem, but the further north you go in the game, the more you progress, the more radiation you start to encounter as well, so you almost need these things later down the line. Also, the obviously only reason to deal with radiation in this game is through becoming a full-fledged alcoholic, as the glorious vodka is the best way to remove radiation sickness. I'm not even kidding, this is an actual gameplay mechanic, and it most likely comes from this weird Eastern European myth that strong alcohol can practically cure everything. If you, like me, grew up with parents from, like, the Balkans, you know that the go-to thing to heal any ailment is rakia. Stalker isn't a traditional RPG game, as you guys may have noticed. There aren't any experience points, and you don't necessarily get stronger or gain new abilities like you would do in, say, Fallout by adding skill points into certain attributes. Not that Fallout's RPG elements are bad, but Stalker is just different. Instead, the game uses purely your knowledge of the world, items, and things you find to improve your capabilities. Now, you might think that it would be unbalanced since picking up a really strong rifle would be enough to smooth sail through the game. What you don't realize is that that overpowered rifle you found just happens to have zero ammunition. There were several times where I would find a gun, and only for me then to have to drop it in exchange for everyone's favorite AK, which would break down on me like basically always. And I didn't drop the original gun because I wanted to, but because I quite literally had to. The synergy of the game's different guns, the difficulty, and the fact that the AI can hit you through walls as if their name was Clara makes for this experience which is sort of hard to describe without fully experiencing it yourself. Stalker is the sort of game where every step you take needs to be a careful one, and hopefully with a lot of safe scumming and experience, you can learn to avoid certain battles and conflicts and simply just sneak by enemies, knowing when to pick and choose your fights. And I, frankly, love this. And I think that the inclusion of the artifacts makes for both a great storytelling device, as it's the main reason for regular loners and stalkers for being here, which by proxy gives rise to other factions wanting to enter the zone for their own goals. It also serves as a gameplay feature, as different artifacts can enhance or change your playthrough in different ways. With that said, earlier we took down those bandits and helped out Bess. Well, turns out his friends at the train depot actually have a little bit of trouble, so we're sent there to help out his friend Sergi to, well, deal with some issues. The entire train depot and all the areas around it are pretty much overrun. With the help of Sergi and his men, we are able to take them all down, but after being told that AGROPROM is in trouble, we rush over there only to run into another pile of bandits before finally making it to our boys. Turns out there's some shit going down at AGROPROM, the facility where researchers and the government have tried to study the irradiated soil in the area to see if it can be used for agriculture, which kind of explains the naming with AGROPROM. Either way, the military is currently having a dance-off with the loners in the area, and if we rush over, we can help out either side. At the end of the day, the battle they're having has nothing to do with us. We don't need to involve ourselves if we don't want to. But the choice here is really up to us, so I am just deciding I'm gonna help out the stalkers because that seems like the most reasonable thing. Our goal, though, is to find a stalker by the name of Mole. He happens to hold some information on where we might be finding STRELOK, but there's also a chance that Mole might die if we don't hurry up. So, helping the loners is the best thing for us to do. So, after a large supply of vodka was provided to me, I of course took the time to eradicate every single member of the military from the vicinity. Mole is then found and tells me that apparently, underneath AGROPROM, there's a massive tunnel system, and according to him, STRELOK hid his stash somewhere within this maze. Naturally, like the rats that I am, I sneak down and start lurking my way through the vast array of paths, only to be met with fierce resistance. The bandits have found themselves a home down here too, and it does take a while to defeat them all, but the tunnels hold more than just bandits. The deeper we go, the more quiet it gets. What waits for us in the depths of AGROPROM is something much more terrifying than Damir and his friends in striped pants. The Bloodsuckers are a terrifying mutant found very rarely in Shadow of Chernobyl, but when you do encounter one, it's like an encounter with your ex-wife, but unlike your ex, the Bloodsuckers won't take your house money and kids. Instead, they will use their ability to turn invisible to circle you and attack you out of the shadows, making for a whack-a-mole-esque battle where you have to sort of guess where they're going to be coming from. One thing that does help you in these sort of battles is the fact that the Bloodsuckers do emit a sort of temporal or spatial disturbance, and the air around them will slightly distort, so you still stand a chance to actually defeat them. So, trying to pinpoint their position using the audio and small distortions in space has to be careful but fast to avoid being killed repeatedly. To be honest, up until this point, the only kinds of mutants I had encountered were fat boards and hounds, so seeing this thing was quite the shock. Its more human design would more likely imply that this could have been a human at one point, given its bipedal posture and human arms and legs. For now, though, I delve deeper, killing some of the military and also discovering STRELOK's stash. It's got some guns in it, as well as a map and the wall, which seems to show the way to the northern path leading to PRIPYAT. On my way out, I do encounter something quite strange. It's another enemy. Some creature pulls me back and forth at the end of a hallway, making me feel like a JoJo being kind of pushed back and forth. The enemy is the controller. Simply trying to shoot it is close to impossible. They're able to mess with our mind, making it feel like it's using a Jedi force pull to grab us. The only way to stop it from ending our life is by hiding close or basically next to a wall out of its line of sight, and that way it can't use its powers on us directly because it uses them by looking at us. And after taking it down, if we approach it, its body is filled with gauze and looks kind of humanoid, just like the Bloodsuckers. For now, though, we leave the tunnels finally, and we reach the AGROPROM Research Institute. And since the place is crawling with enemies, my only option is to go on full frontal Steven Seagal mode and kill everyone inside the base. With everyone dead, I managed to yoink the suitcase, and with it in hand, I can make a daring escape out of AGROPROM and all the way back to garbage. Now, while I'm having a stroll in the rain on my way to garbage, I once again managed to witness the game's A-Life system doing some weird shit. A few loners would just randomly run across the military and have a bit of a gunfight. It's kind of wacky. This is by far one of the most funny and most immersive elements of the Stalker games. They feel so immersive due to the liveliness and activities of the NPCs. Since I have the suitcase, I need to bring it to a man named Barkeep, and he can only be found at Bar, which is the next zone. But before we get there, we run into a new faction within the zone. This is Duty, and they are one of the many groups running around the zone trying to control it. Now, we still have a few more interactions with Duty, and there is a lot to say about them, but for now, we gain passage and head straight for Bar. Honestly, getting into Bar is its own task and a fucking hassle because there's loads of mutated blind dogs right outside which will keep rushing you down while you try to do this. They're extremely dangerous as they attack in packs, and we can see proof of this by the dead rookie stalker right as we enter Bar's territory. Bar itself is packed with Duty soldiers because they control the entire area, and we can experience quite a few things here. For one, if we try to go into the Duty HQ, we instantly get shot on sight, so let's not do that just yet. As we enter the bar, we start noticing that Stalker as a game features a lot of Soviet-era scenery. The game, of course, taking place in Ukraine makes total sense. Having been under the iron fist of the Soviet Union for such a long time, the developers clearly remembered how it felt, and right after the collapse of the Union, and of course, the pain that was caused by it was still left as a reminder for the Ukrainian people to deal with. One of those remnants being, of course, the Chernobyl disaster itself.
I said come in, don't stand there. I said come in, don't stand there.
The second thing we find in Bar is, of course, the many patrons trying to simply relax after days of being out in the zone, surviving, and all that it has to offer. Now, the music in here is also a straight banger, leaving you feeling a sense of melancholy while having a bit of a swill. You even have the opportunity to pick up by far the dumbest quest in my opinion. This one guy lost his family's heirloom rifle and now wants me to go and find it. For now, I will ignore his request and just make my way to the barkeep instead, but remember that quest for later. After handing him the documents, he tells me that we need to check out a place called Lab X18, which could be located in an area known as Dark Valley. By far the least scrupulous sounding area I've ever visited so far. To get inside this lab, he hands me one of two keys. The other one I'll have to acquire myself. Now, I'm also able to ask a few questions to the barkeep while I'm at it. I can figure out some of the people that work with STRELOK, one being Ghost and the other being Fang. Those are both stalkers that are in his team. And they're, of course, his comrades. The last question I ask is about the Wish Granter, which I haven't heard about up until this point. Apparently, according to some strange rumors, there's a giant monolith somewhere in the north of the zone, which is able to grant wishes to those that find it. This concept of the Wish Granter is taken directly from the Stalker movie. Now, this movie itself is also based on the cult classic Roadside Picnic book written by the Strugatsky brothers. Now, the movie is by far one of the strangest and most unique things you'll ever watch in itself, and it has a bizarre background story as to how it ended up even being made, with the director and a few others from the group actually passing away sometime later from similar diseases to those that would have been found in, well, Chernobyl, which many attribute to the filming locations used for the movie. However, the most important aspect for the games are, of course, the similarities, in the sense that the movie has a thing called the Wish Granter, which is a giant monolith which can be found at the center of the zone, and will grant those that reach it their deepest desires and true wishes. This is exactly how the Wish Granter functions in the games. Only big difference is that the movie version or the book version of the zone aren't functionally the same as the one we explore in Stalker the games. The zone is primarily happening within Ukraine inside of Chernobyl due to the nuclear disaster, whereas in the movie and the books, the cause of the zone is different. Now, I'll leave you guys to discern and figure those things out yourself, and I 100% recommend watching the movie because it is 100% worth it. Shit, you can even watch the movie here on YouTube directly, just like I did. God bless the internet. Alright, enough chit-chat, old man. I gotta head to the Dark Valley. Now, on my way there, I encounter a man named Bullet. It turns out his pal Sergey has been kidnapped by a bunch of bandits, so I offer my services to help get him back. Apparently, Sergey is being held at the bottom of this giant factory, so, again, I have to go full Rambo to get him out. I could, of course, sneak inside, but it's a little too much effort for me. With Sergei saved, he actually tells me where to find that second key. Turns out the bandit boss, Borov, has it somewhere inside the old factory where the underground lab should also be located. So I head there and I do find the key, as well as the lab and factory, which seem to be pretty understaffed, as I can easily waltz in and make my way into the lab directly. Alright, we're inside of the lab, and you guys remember how at the start I said this game is a survival horror game? Well, this is where the horror part truly starts to make sense. You think all this fun and beautiful, goofy shit happening outside was the scariest part of the zone? Well, let me tell you. Shit's about to get real. Now, the strange noises, crashing sounds all around us, you quickly forget this is supposed to be a regular first-person shooter game. It starts to feel more like you're playing Resident Evil 7. The sound design is superb and kept me on my toes throughout the exploration of the lab until something jump-scared me from the distance. This creature that attacked me is known as the Snork, and if the controller and Bloodsuckers didn't make it clear, I think this should. Clearly, these things are humans, or at least they were. The Snork are former guards who actually stayed within the zone after the disaster. Their naming comes from the snorkel-like noses, which actually only appear like that because of the masks they used to wear. Now, this name was actually given to them by a German journalist reporting about the zone in World. He was apparently naming them this because they simply looked like this, and, well, their only other name before that was recruits by the Ukrainian soldiers and army in the area when they first started to appear. The way these things attack is also by fucking launching themselves at you, which makes for a better jump scare than any pre-planned one that the game could throw at you. And I think that it's what kind of makes horror in Stalker far more impactful. Unlike a regular horror game where jump scares are just inherently part of the game's plot and happen sequentially, Stalker, by virtue of being an open world styled game with very few scripted events outside of the main plot points or quest markers, makes it where you can genuinely not even know what to expect or run into, and this sort of shit can happen just randomly as you go around, turning what would feel like a very regular first-person shooter survival game into a horror game as well. But the Snorks aren't the only thing which will get your underwear in a twist. Strange flames will start to shoot out at you, and the place just feels terrifying. There'll be shit just flying around. But we managed to find the body of an ecologist. This is another group within the zone, another faction within the zone, and they're specifically here to study the strange phenomena that are taking place, like the artifacts and the anomalies. With the key code from the dead man's body, we can enter the depths of Lab X18 because we have the code. And suddenly, it's not just strange flames shooting at us, it's also objects being picked up and flung straight towards me. Also, like an angry ex, when she sees you, still have Tinder installed on your PDA. For the longest time, I didn't realize that I could shoot towards these strange, ominous things in the distance that were fucking throwing boxes at me, but I realized eventually I could, and it turns out it's actually mutants. These are the poltergeists, and they come in a few different styles, one of them being the pyrogeist, which shoots flames, and another one being an electrogeist, which literally shoots electricity. These things are terrifying since they are invisible until killed, and sometimes when you least expect it, they will fling shit right at you. So, while looking for another key code for the last door leading into the center of the lab, we encounter another strange mutant. It's the pseudo-giant, which is really a strange name, but it makes sense. These seem to also be mutated humans, but they're extremely strong and very big, as their name implies. But with all the Slav power that I muster up, I kill this thing off and get the last key code from another dead ecologist. He also holds a new weapon, the IL-86. It's a bullpup assault rifle, and it is a strange gun which doesn't actually lose durability fast, but is far more inaccurate than some of the other rifles that we can get in the game, specifically assault rifles. It also weighs a ton, not too dissimilar to your mother. Speaking of weight though, it's one of those elements found in Stalker which is kind of easily overlooked. Everything you pick up carries a certain weight, and you often have to balance necessary items alongside shit you really want to keep but have no use for. This again works in the game's favor given the lack of a leveling system, since you don't get stronger throughout the game and, open up more inventory space. So you have to kind of rely fully this balancing act of keeping what you truly need on hand. With that sorted, I fight past a few more Boltergeists and reach the dreaded Lab X18. The tubes lining the walls contain what I assume are experiments of mutated humans, which would explain what we've been running into so far. This is the purpose of Lab X18, its job being to study the effects of psychic radiation on humans. They did this using the tubes also known as Kaimanov emitters. This entire facility was established shortly after the disaster in 1986 and has since served its purpose. After picking up the documents we came for, I noticed it seems the exit to this room has been closed off. The door is blocked and a pyrogeist is starting to fuck me the hell up. It can be extremely hard to defeat as it's not super clear where you are meant to even aim on this thing, but with the determination of an American politician when a country discovers oil, I commit to blasting off all my bullets, and just like the politician, bullets always win. But before I can fully escape the bunker, I have a terrible nightmare. Please! Don't make me wear Nike! I want Adidas, mother!
STRELOK.
Who was that man? Well, we don't know yet. Instead, the entirety of the factory above us is now filled with military soldiers, and unlucky for me, these particular guys don't take bribes unlike real Eastern European politicians, so bullets it is instead. To be honest, the military in Stalker are plagued with corruption. Their main job is supposed to be the protection of the outside world from the entities lurking within the zone, as well as stopping anyone that might want to trespass into the zone. They even have the full right to shoot on sight anyone at their own discretion. Given this level of power, they tend to, at least in the Shadow of Chernobyl game, sort of abuse it to some extent. They will constantly fire at me even though I don't pose a threat, and other times you are fully able to bribe these guys for like 5 shillings and a wet napkin to let you do whatever you want. Point being, the military is essentially the Bosnian government, but with extra steps. With my escape finally being completed, I decided to just lull about the area for a bit. Running into some loners, the first guy I speak to tells me that he found something called a gauze rifle in a stash not too far from here, and he offers to sell it to me. It's only 800 bucks, so naturally I accept like the dimwit I am. However, the dude then runs away and never comes back, and all I hear is a veiled threat to leave or else they will kill me.
Listen to me carefully, sucker. Have you heard the story of Robin Hood? Well, your money went to feed the poor. Forget about it.
Little do they know, I'm a crackhead Slav, so leaving was never an option. After committing a small-scale invasion of their pigsty, I check his body, but there is no gauze rifle to be found. Instead, there is a MP5. But don't fear, a Slav will find his rifle. He always does. I managed to somehow wrap around, and I've now found myself back in Cordon. Stradorovich is waiting for me in his bunker, so I make my way there. But along the way, discover that Nimble and the boys I left at the first bandit camp are pretty much all dead. I don't know what might have gotten to them, but I discover a single loner left alive and help him kill off a lone bandit. Turns out the bandits love to just kind of hold themselves up in a factory nearby and do constant attacks at our friends here. I also take a break with some loners underneath the bridge. I had actually passed this bridge in my first hour of gameplay, but there was nobody there that time, so I just sit for a bit and enjoy the guitar being played. Moments of serenity are strange to find at a place like the Zone. This isn't a place where you can end up for a peace of mind. The Zone isn't a theme park. The world of other games can tend to feel like that sometimes, but not the Zone. And the people that find themselves going into the Zone are often misfits and weirdos trying to get away from the real world. The world outside the Zone, which still exists and persists. It's not like in Fallout where the world has entirely gone to shit. Stalker's world isn't one of an apocalypse that has changed all of humanity. Rather, the Zone is exactly as its name implies, a singular area, a zone in which these things are happening specifically. So the people you find here all come from their own volition. They came here for some reason, perhaps to get away from depths, perhaps because the regular world didn't suit them, or perhaps because the Zone was the only way for them to feel alive again. The Zone is not a theme park. It's a strange, almost living being, or at least that is how it feels like at times. It's a place of constant danger. But in some bizarre way, maybe that is why I love the zone so much, because it's filled with both misfits and rejects alongside some of the worst scum on the earth, but it makes for a melting pot of interesting characters. So, when you sit around a campfire with the boys playing the guitar, it's a feeling that just can't be explained. It's something that must be felt in this game. Back to Stradorevich though. The thumb man gives me a new task. Apparently, a report about a group that did an expedition way up north into the zone has been taken by the army to their nearby outpost, the same outpost where they attacked me when I first started the game. So, with enough ammunition to take over a small country and more grenades than I should physically be able to carry, I ramble my way into this place. I would be able to stealth my way inside by taking the long route, but that would require me to avoid the entire minefield by using bolts, so I just went for the nuclear Call of Duty option and just shot my way in there. Inside the military bunker, I even discovered a TV with someone playing Stalker on it, which is kind of cool. There's also a box in hand that I need to pick up, and with that I can escape and make my way back to Stradorevich with the goods. And with that sorted, I now need to go all the way back to Bar again, which you may notice there is a little bit of backtracking in this game. But since I have some time to spare, I spend the next few hours just shitting about in the zone. I jump around a bunch of anomalies, kill a few boars, and even confront some bandits in a nearby camp before witnessing a group of rabid dogs fighting the bandits as well. Honestly, that is the glory of the zone and Stalker as a game. Sometimes you can just tune out the main plot and story and just go about doing whatever the hell you want to. There are so many different kinds of Stalker players. There is the guy who plays and does every single side quest, which I would die if I had to do that. Or perhaps role-playing is your thing, in and outside of the bedroom. Well, some Stalkers love to be mutant hunters, or perhaps you want to join duty and kill all the members of the Freedom faction, or vice versa. Maybe you are a glue-sniffing speedrunner who's just trying to finish the game at any percent. Or maybe you enjoy collecting an obscene amount of artifacts of all kinds, since there are some extremely rare ones, like the Moonlight one, which only spawns in a few locations. Shit, maybe you even enjoy being a piece of garbage, going around killing everybody like a bandit. You can even pretend to be a businessman, where you just try to hoard as much money as possible. My main point here being that I was able to get many hours of gameplay out of Stalker than what it advertised, purely because there's so many side activities which are not even necessary to do, and for the time they were made way back in 2007 are quite intuitive and make the world feel more alive. Keep in mind, this was before Far Cry 3 and Ubisoft came in and eventually destroyed side quests with a million quest markers and giant towers to climb. But Stalker is by far one of the best games at allowing the player to just experiment and approach things in different ways. The only other game I can think of being probably Fallout New Vegas, which mixes great storytelling with an expansive world that on its own has enough environmental storytelling and side activities where you aren't forced to just stick with the main plot line if you don't wish to do so. So, after returning from my little side adventure, I have now shown up at Bar. With some new information for the barkeeper, I have also learned some important details. First of all the X-18 lab stuff wasn't the only lab that was supposed to exist. There is another one, and that would be Lab X-16. Apparently, something called the Brain Scorcher was built inside of it to stop people from coming closer to the north of the zone and the center of the zone. The lab is found underneath Lake Yantar, and the ecologists are apparently stationed in that area and could provide me with some help. So, it only makes sense for me then to make my way there. My way towards Lake Yantar, I encounter something very strange. I'm stuck between, well, the crossfire of the ecologists, obviously the group we talked about earlier of just scientists, and a new group simply known as mercs, or mercenaries. These guys are the least known faction in the zone in the sense that we know the least about them. But it can easily be speculated that they are paid by foreign governments to enter the zone and get their hands on research papers, artifacts, and many other things for foreign entities simply for the most amount of money. So these guys have no loyalty to each other or anyone. They just work for cold hard cash. To put it bluntly, Uncle Sam wants his artifacts. There are clearly a lot of real-life geopolitical similarities between all the factions present in Stalker as well as the groups within the zone. Now, I won't dive too deep into it from that standpoint, but I do have a ton about the factions that I want to talk about a little bit later, and there's a lot of stuff about the factions that I really love. Now, the mercs, though, are much more well-equipped than the bandits were, which is why I had a hard time actually dealing with them. They seem to use Western-supplied weapons, since the guns they have are the sort that I've yet to run into. They're also much better trained and move in a much harder way to predict. They're just stronger overall. But eventually, I managed to reach the ecologist named Kruglov. I fucking love this guy, by the way. Don't know why, but the ecologists are just so much fun. They're just researchers trying to understand and study the zone, and the way Kruglov speaks and moves around is just goofy to me.
There's a burner anomaly heading the tunnel. We'd better split up and go one by one. That will give us a better chance to survive. You go first, and when I see you have reached the end of the tunnel, I'll follow.
So, I very carefully escort him towards Lake Yantar. On the way, though, we do encounter one of the most strange yet tragic enemy types so far, the zombies. Unlike your AMC-style zombies, these fuckers still use guns, and sometimes when you kill them, you can hear them cry out to their mother. It's honestly sad. They'll be crying out in pain, or even one of them calling out to his daughter. It's as if part of them is still there, memories still lingering of their past lives. It's genuinely tragic to listen to. I also find this depiction of zombies to be the most genuine one. They're out of control and doomed to wander mindlessly forever, while only fragments of their old selves remain, and listening to them recounting their memories of their loved ones or their fears and pain is genuinely gut-wrenching. These guys will still also be wearing the uniforms of their respective factions. The zombies are mindless, and they go after anyone, and since they are still strapped up, you gotta be careful around them. But honestly, killing them is probably the best thing you can do. Not from a gameplay standpoint, but purely to put them out of their misery. Honestly, Lake Yantar as a whole just feels depressing. What remains is merely a puddle compared to what was once there. But there is one glorious place, however, and that's going to be the ecologist bunker. Inside, I can talk to the professor. Now, this guy, this guy is great, because he will be loving to spend money on the artifacts that you bring him. So, if you're ever strapped for cash, you can just sell him your shit for some good money. Either way, before I can enter Lab X18, I need to get my own suit to use, as the emissions and radiation near the lab will kill me otherwise. So, I have to very carefully keep Kruglov alive. Well, fuck, let's try that again. The reason for this is he needs to do measurements to test out my suit for me. So, with that sorted out, I can now make my way towards the lab alone, because this guy does not want to go. He's too much of a pussy. Man, I'm not gonna lie, but getting to the lab this time around was way harder because there's just so many zombies all around this place. It feels impossible at times. Now, whereas the first lab had the poltergeist, the second lab features an endless supply of zombies. It can be demanding as fuck to make it past these things, as you wouldn't expect zombie 6174 to have a full-ass machine gun on their hands to shoot back at you. Stalker is a game that loves to pose not the question of if zombies had guns, but rather, why do zombies have guns? With some grease and a lot of alcohol, I make it down into the psi emitter room. This is the center of Lab X16. My task is to quickly make my way through this entire facility and turn off the emitter. Doing so will allow the professor to investigate this thing and figure out how it works. This unfortunately isn't the brain scorcher itself, but it does emit radio frequencies.
If this is so important, why didn't you explain what you are going there for? And where did you get this photo from?
If you only knew where I've just been and what I saw.
One day you'll finish badly, STRELOK. Hold on, son. You're going to make it.
Alright, after that weird cutscene, it seems I witnessed some sort of memory flash by. They're of an old man and what could be STRELOK or perhaps someone else, making their way towards the north of the zone, towards the center. And as I try to enter the last room, I run across the controller once again. Now, these guys are by far just terrifying. One of the most terrifying and difficult things and enemies to just handle, but as long as you just hide behind a wall, you should be fine. Having killed it, I also find the body of one of STRELOK's men, the one named Ghost. We ransack his body like a rabid Viking and find the documents. It once again confirms that the emissions coming from the brain Scorcher are most likely artificial in nature, and there seems to be some kind of way to stop them. For now though, we use the secret escape tunnel to get the hell out of this place, as the professor called in a tactical nuclear strike on this place to help us out. So, with the documents in hand, I have to make a full, final run back to the barkeep one more time. This time, however, as I'm trying to return, I of course run into a bunch of mercs, once again, and of course a bunch of mutants. But even though I'm still here, I decide, you know what, maybe I should try to find that guy's family heirloom, that one loner from Bar. Turns out, it's a Desert Eagle, by far one of the strongest pistols in the game, but also a gun I have zero need for right now. I could keep it, or I could give it back to him, but who really cares? Also, you ever wanted to be ran over by 100 dogs? I have no idea why this happened, but suddenly the entire dog population of the zone, as well as just one singular bloodsucker, decided to appear and end up killing me, as well as all the bandits here. Peak Stalker gameplay, by the way. Peak. Fucking peak. Alright, so now that I've spoken to the barkeeper, I only have one thing left to do. I gotta make my way to the brain Scorcher and turn it off. I have the protective suit, though it might not keep me safe forever, and it will only do the job somewhat. But before I leave the bar, I swing by the Duty HQ. Their leader, Voronya, wants me to get them some grenade launchers. If I do this for them, they will reward me with a Duty piece of gear or equipment. Only issue is that the grenade launchers are being held by Duty's biggest enemies. Svoboda, or Svoboda just means freedom in both Ukrainian and a few other languages. For example, in my native Bosnian, Sloboda is the exact same word for freedom. I could do this, or I could just shoot everyone in this room. Okay, that didn't work. So I'll take the quest for now, Mr. Duty. Alright, so my destination is a brain Scorcher in the Red Forest, but first I gotta make my way through the military warehouse district, and this is the location of Freedom's headquarters. And I'm able to talk to one of the guys here from Duty to get a side quest to help them kill a bunch of the Freedom soldiers, but given how Duty are kinda dicks towards me, I ignore that shit and instead head for a quick chat with a man named Cook inside of Freedom's base. The funniest shit about Freedom is that these guys are canonically high as fuck. They have spent most of their days smoking ganja and enjoying the zone, not too unlike your best friend that promises those crypto investments are gonna work out according to him. And the other half of the day, Freedom are just sending recruits that steal from them to go naked into minefields. Again, not even kidding. If you were to dissect the different factions in S.T.A.L.K.E.R, they're quite different from most you encounter in other games. They do share similarities in some ways, but I think each faction sort of has a reason for what they are doing, and you can decide to help neither or either of them. For example, Duty, as their name implies, are here as they see it as their duty to rid the zone from existence. They hate mutants and they hate anything to do with the zone. They see the zone as a danger to the world, to humanity, and to their nation. So their reason for being here is honestly very reasonable, though maybe they could be a bit tad more chill about how they go about reaching their goal, but nonetheless, their actual reasons for being here make sense. On the other side, you have Freedom, which are their polar opposite and enemies. They think the zone should coexist with humanity, that it needs to be understood. They know the zone is dangerous, but they also know that trying to destroy it could backfire. Of course, at least that is what I think they believe. They tend to be fucking stoned when trying to explain their modus operandi to you. But again, even their argument could be argued as reasonable. The zone, trying to attack it and destroy it, could only really backfire and be a negative thing. It is, at the end of the day, a force of nature. Also, I don't really know about this whole thing with them hooking up with bloodsuckers, though. That shit's wild. Loners, or free stalkers as we call them, are just simple folk. Regular people who have either been outsiders in society or just had way too much to drink and wandered into the zone by accident. Point being, free stalkers, or just loners, are here to build out a future or fortune for themselves through the zone. Perhaps a bit naive, but not too dissimilar to pioneers trying to uncover something new or never before seen. Bandits, they're simply just the scum of the earth. I have already spoken a bit on them, but bandits as a group are a mix of criminals and scum who simply steal from stalkers or loners who are just trying to survive, being often grouped up and taken on singular stalkers that are alone and none the wiser. Bandits are just the bad guys of the zone. There is no way around it, but their reasoning for being here is probably because they are criminals. This is the only place they can go where they wouldn't be in jail. The ecologists are probably the most reasonable. They're here just to study the zone to understand it, but even part of their existence is sort of questionable. You know, why do they want to study the zone so much? Do they want to use it for negative purposes? We don't really know. There's both positives and negatives to how they, operate. You have the military. Though at first they might seem like shitheels, they're actually just doing their job. The zone is dangerous, as evident by all the fucking insane stuff that we've had to experience so far, and their work is to keep people out of this place for their own safety. And whatever is within the zone is still there, and their job is to make sure that it doesn't leak into the real world. Even though they are corrupt early on in Shadow of Chernobyl, I fucking hate having to try to sneak by their kill-on-sight wall hacks, but the reason for actually being here, genuinely speaking, makes sense. The mercs. Nah, fuck the mercs. All my homies hate the mercs. These guys are shitheads. There is nothing good about them. There is also one more organization.
Но пришел тогда первый от Монолита и сказал: «Вразумитесь».
Where was I? Right, the cook. Well, I find him, and after what is equivalent of trying to talk to Snoop Dogg after a fat blunt, I figure out the location of the grenade launcher. However, as I try to get my hands on it, a bloodsucker is guarding this thing, so I make sure to kill him first. Now, see, I could take the grenade launcher back to duty and receive a duty-tailored suit of gear, or... Yeah, I kept the grenade launcher. On top of a hill, also, I meet one of the Freedom Faction leaders, but before we can exchange pleasantries, he asks me for help holding back a group of attackers. Their name, Monolith. This battle is insane. These guys are killing machines, and they just won't stop coming. There are so many of them in droves that I start wondering if my game was bugged here because there was too many enemies. They are the last faction we'll be encountering. They're also the final boss faction of the entire game. These guys are heavily armed, super well supplied, and by far the most determined group in all of the zone. Having taken down some of their men, I learned that Monolith are a group which worships the Wish Granter. The way they worship it is almost cult-like, an obsession where the Monolith speaks to them and calls for them. How exactly the Monolith are so well equipped isn't exactly, well, explained in the game, but these guys will not stop once they start an assault. They can't hold me back though. I have to make my way up north, and I have to enter the Red Forest. By now, my suit has already started kicking into gear, and I had to make sure I have enough vodka and medicine for the task ahead. As previously mentioned, due to the lack of proper scaling systems in the game or leveling systems, the game just naturally gets harder as you progress, and if you didn't do side quests and pick up important shit along the way, you can still make it all the way to the end of the game. You're just gonna struggle far more because of it. It's like a proper leveling curve in the game without actually having a leveling up system. If I have done my due diligence with side quests, picking up weapons with more ammo, as well as hoarding tons of medical supplies, I'll be able to survive the Red Forest without any trouble. The Monolith's home is incredibly hard to traverse, however, as these guys are an elite fighting force, not just your average bandits. I don't know what it is about Monolith, but something about this group and the way they operate has struck a chord with me, and many others in the Stalker fandom. The way the Monolith blindly fight like mindless beasts is so strange, and even their distinct white gear and armor makes them stand out amongst all other factions. Shit, there is no other faction that's made me listen to a 3-hour-long radio session of music tailored around them or watch propaganda videos about the Monolith. It's hard to describe, but it's a faction that can make people write songs about it and even spend their time cosplaying as them and making literally roleplay segments. There's something about the Monolith. Shit, who wouldn't want to join him when my guy starts dropping fucking bars as his recruitment tactic?
Веду бой. Противники в зоне эффективного огня. Уничтожайте врагов. Убивайте врагов. Братья, убивайте их. Враг...
I can't explain why, but Monolith are just sick. They look cool, they're fucking insane in the sense that they're quite literally brainwashed by whatever the Monolith is, and they also control the most space in the zone and have the best gear. Plus, I mean, who wouldn't want to worship a giant fucking rock? So, would you join? Either way, given that the Monolith have the best guns, it also means that I can take the best guns from them, and in doing so, it makes my journey towards the bunker slightly easier. You see, the bunker here that we're looking for is at the center of this forest, and at the center of, well, the controlled area by the Monolith. If we enter it inside of it, it becomes far more quiet, if you haven't noticed. The bunkers in this game are by far the most terrifying locations, which genuinely make me anxious to explore. But luckily, there are only a few bloodsuckers in our way to the brain Scorcher, and with us finally turning it off, we have now opened the floodgates to the heart of Chernobyl.
What you want is here, Stalker. Come.
We see visions and dreams of that man again, as well as what could be the Wish Granter calling to us. We escape the tunnel, and hell is breaking loose outside. With the Brain Scorcher being turned off, anyone can now enter the north without worrying about their minds being fried. Up until this point, only the Monolith, due to having the Wish Granter on their side, were able to withstand the Brain Scorcher and survive here. But now, it's quite literally a gold rush for everyone to try to get their hands on the north. As we make our escape, we can witness all hell is breaking loose. Freedom and duty are duking it out on the crossroads leading towards Pripyat, while the military is striking the Monolith at their core. It's frankly a total shit show, but also an insane battle. We get a message from Barkeep telling us that all the stalkers, all the best ones, aka the ones that were ranked the highest on the PDA, are gathering up together outside Pripyat to push in against the Monolith units there. Apparently also, because we turned off the Brain Scorcher, we're now ranked number 1. We can also group up with them and together make our way into the city. Now that we're inside of Pripyat, the buildings, of course, are mainly lines and lines of commie blocks, and the Monolith soldiers are littering the tops of them and even shooting from the windows. Even though the Pripyat zone of Shadow of Chernobyl mostly feels like a set piece for the story, I still found it to be well executed. Even though it's pretty straightforward of a path leading straight to the Chernobyl nuclear plant, there was enough variety in the space here for me to feel like I was genuinely making it through the remnants of Pripyat, or really any Eastern European city in disarray. To be honest, at times it felt like I was just back home. Nonetheless, after making it out through the city center and past the football field, we can reach the outskirts of the nuclear facility. We need to make it to the sarcophagus in the center. That's of course where the elephant foot and everything else bad that's happening in Chernobyl is located. But getting there is easier said than done. The enemies will be both military and Monolith, and both will keep firing RPGs and all kinds of other shit our way before we can even approach the building. Finally inside, and... Whoa, hold up! What the fuck was that? Is it you, God?
No, it's me, Morgan Freeman Stalker.
Alright, in reality, what we are hearing is the Wish Granter. It's communicating to us. It's repeating the sentence, "Иди ко мне," meaning come to me, while also saying that will grant us one wish. The tone being set by the voice here actually helps keep you immersed in the shit show we have found ourselves inside of. I won't lie to you, there were loads of failures while I tried to reach the Wish Granter. The Monolith here used the Gauss rifle, the same gun the guy tried to sell me all the way back in Dark Valley, which was just a scam. The Gauss rifle is by far the strongest gun you can find, and it's kind of necessary for a strange bug to be done in the game later on. In my case, I use it sparingly as the ammo for it is not readily available even inside the Monolith's home base. I do manage to eventually find an exoskeleton as well inside of here, the best armor and gear in the game, allowing you to carry far more on your body and in your inventory. There's also a strange door which I'm unable to enter, but that doesn't really matter. I instead make my way into the room holding the Wish Granter. And there it is. I no longer need to use my guns. As the Wish Granter is left on its own, no one is guarding it directly. And using some strange warp holes, I can slowly approach it, and things are far more somber the closer I get to the Wish Granter. Finally, I get to interact with it, and...
I want the zone to disappear.
that is it. I asked the wish granter to destroy the zone and it's all over. This felt strange and not really right. That is it. Our wish is granted, but our eyes rolling back in the end imply perhaps that we didn't actually get our wish fulfilled? Well, like me, you might have thought that this ending didn't really feel right. Perhaps you might have tried getting a different ending in the game because, well, there are multiple. There is the one that I got, which is considered the good ending, as it implies the zone is gone and things should be back to normal. There are quite a few more possibilities. There are 4 more endings to be exact. One is known as the greedy ending. In this one, the marked one wishes to be rich.
I want to be rich.
And the wish granter grants this wish. We watch as coins start to rain upon us, but we quickly notice that the coins are actually just rubble from the building falling down and falling apart, eventually killing us. It's a fitting ending given that the wish granter clearly isn't actually granting wishes, but is instead creating illusions of the wishes we want the most, the same way it controls the monoliths. The second possible ending is the ruler ending, which only happens if you happen to have less than 50k on you and also kill both the leaders of freedom and duty. In this ending, we wish to become the ruler of the zone. What transpires is the wish granter gives us the big suck, and then we seem to get absorbed and become part of it. A grim fate, but our wish is granted. We're now part of the wish granter and control the zone and what happens within it. The last 2 endings are immortality and the negative ending. First one requires you to have a terrible reputation, aka just be a total asshole to everyone in the zone. If this is the case, you will ask the wish granter to grant you to be immortal. But little did you know what sort of immortality would be given. The wish granter will turn the marked one into a statue, being neither dead nor alive, a perfect way of describing true immortality. Immortalized not through endless life, but rather immortalized in the minds of people the same way as many great and horrible men in history. The negative ending is the worst one in the sense of what happens. For this one, you gotta have a terrible reputation, less than 50,000 cash, and leave the leaders of duty and freedom alive. What the marked one then wishes for is for humanity to be controlled, as humanity is terrible. What we witness next is seemingly the literal eradication of humanity, as well as the eradication of the world itself, leaving only an empty void for mankind to float around in, or at least the marked one to float around in. That is the interpretation I could discern from watching this one. And wow. Each of these endings carry a certain level of philosophical undertones, all of them either featuring greed, pride, vain, or some form of a sin. But what if I told you none of these are the real endings of Stalker? Well, I guess most of you already fucking knew that because you probably played it, but boom bada bing, big plot twist! There is 2 more real endings, and all we just watched was fake. So let's get the real endings instead. But for this, we gotta rewind a bit back in time. All the way back. You guys remember when we found Ghost's body inside of Lake Yantar, the underground X-Lab 16 thing? Well, we did actually pick something else up here. Another quest, which I kind of missed. It's a quest to find a man named Guide. He's located back at the same place that Fox was way back at the start of our journey, and I then can go there and talk to him. I lied to the guide and tell him that I need to meet a man named Doctor who was mentioned in the notes that Ghost was carrying. According to this guy, Guide, we can actually find the Doctor inside of STRELOK's group's stash. So a bit more backtracking and we are in the tunnels once more. Oh man, but just as I try to enter STRELOK's little safe space, I get blown up, and the Doctor makes his appearance.
Have you lost your memory or something? You were the one who suggested that we take this precaution. Oh well, at least you're still alive. Look, STRELOK, we've got no time, so I need you to listen to me. Everything you have said about the monolith is true. All of it. It is just an illusion manufactured in a lab next to the sarcophagus. And nobody who reached the monolith has ever come back. It looks like they have died there.
And there it is. The big reveal. All along, I have been STRELOK. The marked one is him. This man who I've kept hunting for was me all along. Ghost was one of my comrades, and Doctor here is one of my comrades as well, which is kind of crazy. To be honest with you, I wasn't aware of this the first time around. I didn't know this. This actually caught me off guard. But I guess it's about time we get the real ending. So, After finding the secret stash, we need to then head to another secret stash, which is inside of PRIPYAT. So we have to repeat all the same shit we just did, aka kill the monolith, turn off the brain scorcher, kill monolith, enter PRIPYAT, kill monolith, enter random commie block apartment, and pick up documents written by STRELOK himself, which could explain some of the bizarre stuff in the zone, as well as also finding a brand new suit. So, back in the sarcophagus, I can now head in a different direction than I did before. Remember that strange locked door? Well, if I have the decoder on me, which I found in the stash, an item you can pick up early on in the game, you can open this door. Or if you don't have the decoder and just want to say fuck it, and don't want to do the detour, you can actually use a gauze rifle to glitch the door and make it open up anyways. It's kind of a cool little thing. But doing this unlocks a new area of the nuclear plant. And once more, the monolith will be roaming the entire place. The final room we enter will contain some sort of device. If we shoot it up and try to destroy it, the final ending will play. This is a C-Consciousness. It's a hologram which tells us about the zone. Apparently, the C-Consciousness is what controls the zone. The C-Consciousness was a secret project started after the nuclear disaster. This group of researchers placed themselves directly underneath the nuclear plant as it was the ideal place for this research. They also then created the X-Labs, X-18 and X-16, as extra facilities to study mind control and much more. In the process, they discovered something else, the noosphere, or noosphere. To explain the noosphere in simple terms, it is the human cognition. Think of the biosphere being what makes up the biological life on Earth, and the geosphere, which is the Earth itself and everything within it. Then the noosphere is the human cognition, the human feelings and minds, sort of. It's like an invisible field surrounding Earth and is affected by human minds and actions on the planet. And well, together, these scientists developed the C-Consciousness as a way to try to influence and control the noosphere. Their goal being to remove things like war and conflict from human cognition and create a better world. However, in the process, they fucked up and instead created the zone, which has only been expanding ever since. They were also guilty for creating the Monolith faction, more or less. They set up the brain scorcher to melt the brains of people to keep them away from the C-Consciousness. But in the process, they also needed a strong army, which was mind-controlled into doing their bidding. But STRELOK, or rather our incursions with our group, led us all the way to their front door, which was locked, and this caused interferences and instability in the zone. As such, using Monolith as well as other secret stalkers, the C-Consciousness sent out sleeper agents to commit assassinations against STRELOK's group, even managing to capture STRELOK at one point, and that is what we saw on that truck at the very beginning of the game. But due to a fuck-up by the C-Consciousness and STRELOK's amnesia, he was given instructions to instead kill himself, which, yeah, didn't really work out as planned. We are now given two options. We can take the blue pill or the red pill. We can choose to either join the C-Consciousness, becoming the 8th member of the group, and now taking part in the expansion and change of the zone. Doing this, we will see the first ending. We witness as STRELOK is put into the tube, and we watch as Doc stands with his blind dog and wonders about where STRELOK could have gone, before he also walks away. The ending is somber, but not the only option. We're able to take the second option too. Instead of joining them, we decline. We are then teleported outside and have to fight through waves and waves of Monolith soldiers. This is such a cool section of the game, though half the time you will be getting whiplash from being thrown back and forth all over the place using the same teleport as we used back at the Wish Granter. We even teleport Stredorovich one time.
What the hell?
Honestly, it's great. I love this segment of the game, and then we just gotta make sure to kill all these monoliths. Finally, we'll reach the room holding all the members of the C-Consciousness, and we'll witness as STRELOK shoots and kills all of them.
I don't know whether I was right or wrong. I guess I'll never know. But I made it. And I guess I should be thankful for that.
With that being done, we watch as STRELOK is in a field. The zone has been destroyed, or at least it seems like that. The C-consciousness is gone and STRELOK can finally take a break. This is the game's true canon ending, as it's followed up in Stalker PRIPYAT, and it continues from where this ended. But that is that. That's the ending of Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. 9 out of 10, not enough compote and sujuka consumption. No, but for real though, this game is a 10 out of 10 experience, and it's unlike any other. Stalker is a special game, and the zone is a terrible, but at the same time, amazing place. I always assumed that the Stalker story took second place to the gameplay, but after having finally played it for myself, I can see that I had a wrong impression of this franchise. The story is perhaps not the most surprising, but it does come with its own profound messaging. There are clearly many undertones of the feelings of the developers and emotions as Ukrainians at that time in history of the games being created, but there's also lots of themes of humanity and its role in the world, as well as the lack of and little control of that we as humans truly possess over the forces of nature, aka something like the zone. I love this game, and honestly, I just want to finish this video script so I can go and play Clear instead, because I don't want to be sitting here and working on this shit. I want to play more Stalker. I don't think there's any game that I've genuinely loved this much, and that's kind of just made me obsessed with it. Like, I've spent countless hours watching other people's Stalker videos, watching YouTube shorts about Stalker, listening to Stalker playlists on repeat, because I'm just so invested in this world now, and I want to know more about it. It's honestly one of the few games I've played where it genuinely wants you to try to experiment and just try different ways to approach the game. So, 12 out of 10 cheeky brikis, and let's get to 10,000 likes for me to cover Clear Sky next, because I really want to cover Clear Sky next. Also, a big thank you to all our channel members and, of course, our brand new patrons. Yes, we have new Patreon that is up, that I've opened up, and everyone who becomes a member will, of course, get to have their credits at the end of each of these videos. And, of course, this will also help cover the cost of making these sort of videos, because they just take a long time and a lot of effort. So it really mean a ton, guys. If you do want to check me out on Patreon, please do so. Everybody who becomes a patron for like $1 or $5 tier, you also get a custom drawn Pepe from me. So that's another thing. Also, a big thanks to all the people who helped me out with this video. Their links will be in the description down below.